Buenos Dias Gunners Collective. Back at it like a smack addict. And as you can tell by that thumbnail right there, just like I promised, today we're going to tell the story about the Lady in White. Now, the history of the Lady in White, right? It goes back a lot of years. I first heard the story, when I was a youngster. I was about 8 or 9 years old, and we used to have a family reunion. We used to go out to Orville, which is located by Chico. And growing up, a lot of my older family originated out of Livermore, California. That's right over the hill, right after Pacheco Pass, right after Niles, right after the Ultima. Now, growing up, I wasn't into ghost stories. I wasn't believing things like that. People would tell me things and it was like, yeah, whatever. And as a kid, I had a tough exterior shell. I had a shell like, Charlie Holmes, I ain't believing none of that shit. You got me fucked up, right? But I'm not a stupid person, and even as a kid, I wasn't stupid enough to believe that we were the only ones here. I was always aware that there was something else out there. What it was and to what degree of gangster it was, I had no bearings on that and I couldn't call it. But I wasn't a baboso. But at the same time, I'm at my family reunion in Orville, little kid, and my Theo Jackie, who's a great uncle, right? It's actually my grandmother's uncle. He starts telling the children the story, right? And he tells us a story about, he was coming from work on Niles Canyon, and it was late that night. He says it was real late, and it was raining. It was raining hard, and it usually doesn't rain in that area. But it was just pouring rain. It was still warm outside, yet it was raining. And he said he had an old beat up Datsun truck, and he was just trying to get somewhere. He was just trying to get home. He worked that swing shift, but he had actually worked overtime that day. So he had left the plant late. So it was pitch black dark. Anyways, he was trying to get home and he's driving. He said the year was probably about 1974, 1975. And, I wasn't even born at that time. But he's driving and he says it's raining. And then he looks off towards the side of the road and he sees a lady. She's walking in the pitch black dark. He almost missed her. And several cars had passed her, Wasn't too many cars out. And for some reason, he said, because of the rain. But he swerved over quick. Back in them days, motherfuckers was gentlemen. And they see a woman on the side of the road. They're concerned, or they're maniacos and they're trying to get it. Either way, she was going to get swooped up. So, and my Theo was probably a maniaco. Anyways, so he goes to pick her up. And he says she talked normal. She was a white chick. And she was wearing a white dress. He didn't trip. He said she had dark brown hair, real dark brown eyes. It was pretty quiet. But he asked her, hey, do you need a ride? And she said, yeah. And he said she was carrying a suitcase. She was carrying a little black suitcase. And so she got in the car. He went around old school, opened up the door for her. She got in. Everything was good. Instead of asking her name, he kind of kept it quiet. He was going to make his next move, his best move, when they got into the city, Of course, he was going to ask her where she was going and try to, hit that lake one time, take her to his spot and beat them. But, and this is the story he's telling us even as youngsters, there was no sugarcoating, no added preservatives in my family. He was like, man, I was trying to get that one time for my mind. So anyways, she's not saying much. He's not asking questions. He gets off to like almost right where you could start going down and see all the lights. Anyone that's ever been on Niles Canyon knows you can see all the lights of the city once you get over a certain point. And mind you, it's storming, pouring rain. So when he pulls up or he's driving, all of a sudden she reaches over and grabs his arm and she tells me, you can leave me here. And now he's tripping because he was like, what? It's still pitch black dark and it's still miles away from, where he's going. It looks close, but it's actually probably about 4 or 5 miles. So he's like, are you sure? And, back in them days, motherfuckers wasn't on no R shit. They wasn't on no rape shit. So he ain't going to take, if she says she wants to get dropped off, he going to drop that bitch off. You feel me? And in that fashion, no disrespect to the women listening to this, but, just the way I talk. So he pulls over, he hits that curb. One time he swerves over and he goes outside. He opens his door and he goes around the truck to open her door. And he says that when he went to open her door, she was gone, right? She was gone, but her case remained. And on her case was a horse hoof, right? It was a bloody horse hoof on her case. And so he freaked out. You know what I mean? He said, "Fuck, she was there. There was no way for her to open the door." I mean, it's a little truck. It's not like one of those big trucks where you can't see over it. It was just a little Datsun. And so he jumped in there and wiggled. He got out of there very quick and went home. Of course, he had 6 brothers, so he told them all the story. Him being the youngest of the brothers, they weren't trying to hear that shit. They were tired from work or going to work. And one of his brothers, his older brother, the oldest, actually sat him down and said, "You know what? I've seen her before." And they started comparing and matching details, and come to pass that it was almost dead on what he's seen. And he says, "Yeah." And then he told him the story of the lady in white. And I don't know the exact story. It's not like the La Llorona where she killed her children and she drowned them and now she's looking for them, and she can't get into wherever she's trying to go until she, finds her dead children. So she searches the rivers or the creeks or whatever. It's nothing like that. This lady in white, something mysteriously happened to her because there's not just one. Every city you're from, you're going to hear about this myth or this ghost, the lady in white, all over the country. And I mean, when a lot of people are telling the story, it could only be 2 things. 1, it's fucking real. Or 2, there's a fucking baboso that likes to travel, right? And this story got out there. Could be an old wise tale, whatever the case may be. But I believe my tío. My tío has always been a real serio person about his business, about that action. And if he tells me something, he ain't doing it just to scare me. He can give a fuck less what I believe or what I don't believe. But at the same time, man, he's putting the information out there because it was on his conscience. It was on his back. And he needed to shake the monkey off his back and tell some people. So he's telling us, of course, all my little cousins are like, nah, that's bullshit, man. Whatever, man. Let's go do a movie. Let's go smoke some weed or something. I myself, being the way I've always been, I like to pick brains and get inquisitive. And I want to ask the one question that none of these babosos were willing to ask. I said, horse hoof, huh? I said, so what was in that case? That suitcase. He says, I'll show you. Right? I said, nah. He says, come on, motherfucker, shit, do it moving. So we actually got up and went into his house, his pad, because this was his land that we used to have the family reunion on. He owns several acres out there in Orville to this day. He's the only one out of his brothers that's alive. And we went in his room, and sure enough, he had this little black case. It was probably, I don't know, 3 feet by, not that big, 2 feet by 1 foot, just a small slim case, a black old leather case, looked like one of them old motherfucking satchels a doctor would carry or something. And he opened it, and there was 4 white dresses in there, right? And that's it, all the same dress, like a thin, almost silk material, old school, real lacy, looked like some old pilgrim shit. And he said, this is exactly what was in here. It's been folded up. I just looked in and put it back. I said, wasn't no weed or nothing in there? He said, no, it wasn't nothing like that. This is what was in there. And I said, okay, so where's the horse hoof? He said, remember when you guys are kids, even littler, and I always had a horse hoof hanging over my door? And I said, yeah, I remember that shit. And I said, where is it now? He said, look up. I looked up over his room, and he goes, I put it over my room. That's my blessing right there. He goes, isn't it a trip how, all my brothers are gone except for me. I've had that horse hoof with me ever since, like it was a good luck charm or something, right? And that could just be a coincidence, but I mean, he had 6 fucking brothers and 2 sisters, and all of them are gone except for him. So that was his encounter with the lady in white. And I'm going to tell you another little story about another family member that had an encounter with the lady in white, right? So my grandfather, my grandfather's from Zacatecas out there in Mexico. He owns a rancho, and his name's Don Esparza. And, he has cows, and he has a tienda right there. And he's just doing his thing. He ain't having it his way, but I mean, he's having it his way, for those that know. He has a wife over there, wife over here, and it is what it is. That's how the Mexicanos get down. But anyway, so I was at his rancho, and, I was staying out there. I was wiggling. I was on the run. I did a shooting in Merced, and All Point Bulletin, they was looking at me. And I ultimately ended up beating that case. But so I'm out there for about a year, wiggling in Zacatecas. And I'm going to be totally honest with the gente. My Spanish ain't up to par, What Spanish I did garner and learn, other than the slang I learned as a norteño in prison, we were obligated to at least, if not know Spanish, practice our Spanish and become aware, of our surroundings, being a Mexicano or a Chicano. So that's about the gist of that. But, so I'm there. I'm kind of El Pocho. I'm kind of plastico in their eyes, you know, so they're all looking at me some type of way, but it is what it is. You know, after about a year, I knocked all their chicks, and that's what it was. Um, but I'm right there, and my grandfather. Now you got to understand, this is on my mother's side of the family. The my other one, the Theo that told me was on my father's side of the family. So two totally different familias, two totally different stilos, two totally different, you know, whatever. And my grandfather starts telling me a story. He was like, "Hey, mijo, did I ever tell you the story about the lady that was right here on my rancho walking around with the white dress on?" And that piqued my interest because I remember my older Theo telling me that way back in the days, you know. I said, "Nah, why? What's up? What's cracking?" He said, "Watch out." He said, "So," he said, "a long time ago, your mother," he said, "you know, my mother and my tios, they were all out there riding three-wheelers, you know, those old three-wheelers and quads on the sand dunes out, because there's a lot of sand dunes right by the rancho, you know what I mean? They were out there riding, and my grandfather told them, hey, don't stay out past dark, because there's, you know, there's crazy things in Mexico. There's little people, and we'll get to that. You know, I'll tell you the story on that. And then there's people that practice black magic. There's just a lot of different shit in Mexico, you know what I mean? Different countries, different strokes for different motherfucking folks. Menudo. And in that fashion, that's real. You know, and I'm gonna tell you stories about things I've seen with my own fucking eyes. But he tells me, he says they were out there riding their three-wheelers. And one of my tios, Jerry, his tire had come off. His tire come off. Him being the youngest, my mother being the oldest, my other Theo told her, "Hey, go to back to the rancho and get my toolbox so I could fix his tire real quick." You know, these kids were kind of self-sufficient. That's the way my grandfather raised his children, man. You got to do it on your own. You know, we ain't gonna do it for you. So my mom goes back, and my Theos. Next, you know, my mom's there getting the toolbox. My Theos all come running. They're freaked the fuck out, right? They're saying that there's a witch. A witch wearing a white dress that they seen. Now my mom never seen this shit, you know. She's gonna believe her brothers because there's no reason for these kids to be lying. And they were not the type to play jokes on each other. They're very tight, you know. They were all they had. And my grandfather, they tell him, so he says, "Let me go check." So he grabs his 22 rifle and he goes out there. And he comes back, and my mom says she'll never forget her dad's face. Now you gotta understand, my grandfather is one of those Mexicanos that don't fuck around, homes. You know what I mean? A man of very few words, a man that is not, he ain't no fucking punk, period. You know what I mean? That's where I get it from. He's about his business. He will show up and show out. And he came back as white as a ghost, my mom said, and he never told them anything. You know, he never told them anything. He just said, fucking go to sleep. Just shut up and go to sleep. Well, what had happened was this, right? And this is what he's telling me years later when I'm over there in Mexico. He tells me that out there he had workers. You know, workers would work on his farm to you know, deal with all the cows, because he had over 1,000 cattle, right? And so they had these three buildings that he had built, which what they slept in. They were basically like dorm settings that he had set up for them. You know, not tents, kind of like those fucking houses. Those you know, the kind of houses on the trailer park. Those fucking, they're houses, but they're fucking flimsy. Anyways, this is where all the paisas were sleeping that worked on his, you know, on his rancho, and the vaqueros. And he said that when he went, he kept hearing something on one of the buildings. And when he looked, there was a paisita that came out, and he was like, "Hey, I hear that every night, every night. I think something's broke in the back, and it keeps hitting the wall." You know, they're not thinking fucking ghosts. They're not thinking witches. They're not thinking nothing like that. They're thinking, "Hey, we need to fix the roof, Holmes, right? Hey, hey, mira, Dan Esparza, yo quiero una Sprite también," right? This is what they're thinking, you know? And so anyways, they go around the corner, and my grandfather said that there was a lady in a white dress with an old looking face, and she was literally walking on the side of the building. Not upright, sideways. And he fucking freaked out and took off running. That paisa, he never seen him again. That motherfucker left. He didn't even get his shit. He left and never came back to the, never came back to get his shit. And my grandfather went straight home, freaked out, and told, you know, his kids to go to sleep. Never told him anything. So he's telling me this. So I said, well, what happened the next day? You know, how'd you get over it? He said that he went the next day and there was muddy footprints all over the side of that building, the back of that building, where I guess that white witch or the lady in the white dress, whoever it may be, was walking. I said, damn, was that just someone all tweaked out? And he said, nah, you know, if she was, that was some good scante, some shit that'll make you fucking walk sideways. But it's just a trip that he goes, nah, that was the lady, mijo, in the white dress. I go, wow, you know, That's a trippy story because that's what my Theo on the other side of the family told me. And I've heard the story several times over from a lot of different people in a lot of different places about this lady in a white dress. But I've heard it from a lot of people in the Livermore area, Niles Canyon, they call it the Niles lady, or even Pacheco Pass. All that area, for some reason, there seems to be a wandering lady. Now, the only thing I could think, hint is that maybe there was a car wreck or a lady got murdered, strangled, or you never know. You watch movies just like I do, murder mysteries, and maybe this is what happened. But I mean, it's just like anything in life. If someone says they see like a UFO or something, and you're like, yeah, okay, but also, what I mean, you're on that fucking fentanyl, and then the next person's seen it 3 miles over that doesn't even know this baboso, and then the next person's seen it, what I mean? Then the sureño's seen it, then the norteño's seen it. Oh my, everybody that doesn't interact sees it. Well, guess what? 9 times out of 10, it's probably the fucking truth, right? So when people tell this story, I don't believe it's a myth. I've seen some weird shit. I've actually seen ghosts, when I was in Nellis and when I was in Preston, I told you about the lady in the last spill, Anna Corbin. I know I seen her with my own 2 fucking eyes. Or 4 eyes, because I wear glasses, Spencer. But I will say this, the proof is in the pudding, not the Jello pudding pop, Bill Cosby fans. I'm talking about the pudding, the real shit. And, it's just quietly as it's kept, man. It is what it is. If the story, if the shoe fits, you wear it. And there's been a lot of trippy things that have gone on in this world, that we're never going to know or we can never explain. That's why it's called the unexplained. I can't explain it. You can't explain it. But to sit here and think and actually grasp the concept of us being the only ones on this earth and there not possibly being different forms of creation, wandering souls or whatever the case may be, well, then you have to be about as dumb as fucking some of these other YouTubers, like Gil. Trip. When it's all said and done on some real shit, there's some other shit out there. There's things out there, man. And it's not drugs that make people see things. I mean, it does, I'm sure. And it's not none of that. It's just chance. It's not everyone. You can go through your whole life. I've met people that are old and went through their life and they're like, I ain't never seen shit, right? And they haven't. They're just being honest. And I've met people that have seen it 10 times over, and different forms, demons or ghosts or whatever you believe in. You always remember if there's good, there's evil. I mean, if there's yin, there's yang. If there's coke, there's crack. There's always going to be opposites because opposites attract, right? So to sit there and think that things are fake, you have to have an open mind. You have to be susceptible to education and to believing in the realm of things that are not totally possible. And that's just what it is. I've seen a lot of things, and it doesn't necessarily make them evil. What is the concept of evil? Spell evil backwards, lived, or is that how you spell it? No, it means live. It's devil backwards, something like that. It's some evil shit. Put it like that. You know what I mean? Dispensa. But I will say this, that lady in white, she's been seen a lot. Bay Area, especially. I've heard in Massachusetts, New York City, especially in Mexico también. My grandfather's seen it. My Theo's seen it. I'm hoping to one day see her. You know what I mean? I'll knock the lady in the white dress one time for her mind just to see if I can get it. You know what I mean? Imagine that. That's on the bucket list. I need to knock the lady in the white dress. But, nah, my chick would trip. I just want to say, before you travel, down Niles Canyon or Pacheco Pass or any of those windy roads, be aware. Be aware before you stop and think you got something. You're going to pick up a lady in a white dress, because she, like I said, she might have been a blessing to my Theo. She might have just looked at my grandfather some type of way, but you never know. You never know, what kind of evil is lurking out there. You never know what her intentions are. Maybe you look like the baboso that choked her out. So it's going to be a bad night for you. You know what I mean? Or maybe, just seeing an apparition like that could change your life to where it freaks you out till you're never the same again. There was a point in my life when I seen some shit, and we're going to talk about that in another spill, where I wasn't right for a minute. Everywhere I went, I was looking over my shoulder, and it wasn't because I was tweaked out or because I was on scant there, no, it wasn't none of that. I seen some shit. I seen some shit, and, it's well documented what I seen because a lot of other people seen it at the same time, but, and we'll get to that. We'll definitely get to that. But anyways, I just wanted to tell the story, Um, Again, if you guys like these ghost stories, if you guys like these real true life stories that I'm telling you, man, hit that like and subscribe one time. Just a little bit of switch up on the content, just a little bit of something for your mind, something to sleep on, something for the late night. With that being said, man, I hope that you move fast with a purpose. Remember, that's call hustling. At the end of the day, man, I rock the good rhyme for the gente and for all people, Um, get out there and get it, man. Get out and get something. And that's real. And in that fashion, the gun, don't let her get you. Bang, bang.